Welcome back. This is the next weekend from when I got the cabin top glued on, and we're trying to get the seat tops done, and so can't do that until we finish the cooler, so that's what I'm working on today. And I took my glued up sheet of foam here. You can see all the pieces. I sanded it flat, fit it into the boat, and I still hadn't quite finished designing the cooler, so I had to go do that. And here is a top-down view. There's the thwart. This is the bridge deck here. So the areas that have the dots in them, those are going to be the same level as the underside of the hatch. You can see here's the actual cooler cutout, and the dashed line on the inside represents the lower inboard edge, because the top of the cooler is like a pumpkin cutout. It's got beveled edges. After doing that, I printed out a full-size sheet, which has disappeared. Oh, here it is. Okay, I printed it out in full size, and it goes this way. And I used that lining it up with the hatch after I got the starboard seat top located. Set this down on there. That allowed me to cut out the actual hatch in the the lid in the plywood seat top, and then transferred that outline to my top of my foam, as well as these other outlines that show where to cut the foam. So this groove over here is going to be a drainage channel, and this space here represents the beveled side of the hatch. So here it is with the cutout. I used the bandsaw and came in from this edge. The other one I had to use a Japanese saw because I couldn't feed it through the bandsaw the other way. So I cut out the little front section, and so that goes back in here. And so because the thwart is here, that limits how far over the hatch can be. So I've got it maxed out. This is going to be the drainage channel. This is going to be the flange going all the way around with a gasket to the underside of the hatch. And this here is also a gasket. Here's the drainage channel on the other side, and the drainage channel across the back. So inside the hatch, this beveled edge ends up flush with the forward part of the foam, and on the inboard side of the hatch, this is flush. Over here there's an overhang of about that much, and in the back there's a pretty decent overhang. I can stick my hand all the way in there. So here's the lid. There's the side view of the lid, so it will open this way, and here's the front view of the lid, so you can see the bevels. And so the lid drops down in there. Let's see if it'll do it. Yeah. And the aft edge there, it will be where it hinges. Actually, the piano hinge will be way back there, so it should lift right out. I'll put the seat top down and give you a view of what that looks like. Here it is with the seat top down. So now you can see that drainage channel that I had pointed out before. Is the same as the cutout for the seat top. So I'll probably cut this drainage channel with a rounded ball nose router bit, and it'll just be a constant depth, and then I'll make a sanding block and I'll sand the drainage angle down. The front part of the hatch is only going to be like 2.5 inches tall, and same on this side. This will be cut out for the drainage channel. So then once I get that done, I'm going to finish out the inside of the cooler with fillets and fiberglass cloth, and then I'll probably put a layer of fiberglass underneath the lid where it's going to be exposed here. And after that, the foam can go in, and then I'm going to glass these cutouts, because I'm not going to build this ring with any wood. This is just going to be shaped into the foam, the drainage channel, and then I'll glass inside the drainage channel. So then after that, I'll take my plywood hatch, add some rails to it, and glue the front on. I'll cut the front out of the cockpit side here, and I'll glue a cleat across the back for the piano hinge. and I've also got to embed a cleat in the foam to take the outboard piano hinge screws. Fast forward to tomorrow. I worked the rest of the day yesterday, but I didn't take a whole lot of video, and this morning I'm ready to glue in the top of the cooler, and I did the drainage channel with a 1/2 inch ball nose bit, and I've got it down about 1.25 inches deep, and so that's the final depth for this outboard part. But the sides are going to be angling down into the cockpit, and I can't do those with the router without some kind of jig, and my bit doesn't reach. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and glue this in and glue this piece in, and then I will, after that's set up, I can go ahead and glue my seat tops on, and from that point I can just continue working on the cooler top. So like these edges, we're going to get rounded over. I'll make a sanding block that fits in here. I'll make this cutout for the drain, and I'll sand down into there to create the angle, and then I'll be fiberglassing all of this, all the drainage channel, the top of this flange. It'll be a little bit finicky, but it'll be easier than, you know, inlaying solid wood or something like that. And then I'll make the hatch separately, and then I'll fit the lid down in and glue it. At some point it'll get glued to the lid so that when you lift the cooler, the lid lifts out like that. And other stuff that I got done yesterday, I glued on my companionway hatch coaming, and I also glued in 2 of the fiberglass angles into the aft part of the ballast tank, and I also laid up the last of the 4. There's 4 remaining fiberglass angles. I laid those up yesterday. Also, I glued the cleats into the anchor well, except for the ones across the transom. So those have kicked. And I made another change to the well. You can see I eliminated the flange. There used to be a flange here. Here is the piece that I cut out from the well. So I eliminated that flange, and I also cut the notch out of the transom. So here's my transom. It's a 3 inches up from the keel. So the keel was there. I went up 3 inches from this point, and I cut across to both of the wells. And I did this, well, I was always planning to do that cutout in the back, because I think it's going to be above the water line, so it will let the water flow out the back, as opposed to, you know, just in case it was going to try to, you know, create some drag. But it's easy to add some foam blocking and glass it in as buoyancy and fairing if I accidentally made this cutout too big. It is a little bit big, but I also didn't want to have to worry about the leg of the outboard hitting any of the wood. So it clears easily. I haven't glued in the clamp block yet, and I still have to make the bulkhead here. But that's about all we got done yesterday. Also, I glued in a couple more, the last 2 fiberglass angles in the forward part of the ballast tank. But I'm trying to focus on the cooler, because I want to get the seat tops down so that I can get going on the coaming. And today I also might fit the coaming top cleat that goes along the top edge of the shear strike, but I can't work on the coaming beyond that until the seat tops are installed. Okay, wrapping it up for the weekend, I've got all of the remaining fiberglass angles glued into the aft portion of the ballast tank, and those are drying now. I've got I'm almost ready to glue down the starboard seat top, but I still am waiting to paint this compartment, because I think it'll be easier to paint in here before the seat top goes down. and on the other side, these two compartments I'm going to paint. And I've got the starboard seat top just sitting over there at the moment. And I've also glued in the framing around the coaming for the forward hatch. So if I move the forward hatch out of the way, here's all that framing. Pretty quick and easy. Just use some long clamps to clamp across the joints. And I set the hatch down on the deck, and then I pushed the coaming pieces up until they just barely kissed the underside of the hatch. So when I add the gasket, that will lift the hatch off the deck. And with the gasket compressed, I'm hoping for the hatch to float about 1/8 of an inch above the cabin top. And this piece was actually a little short, I think, but I think I pushed all these coaming pieces up farther than what we designed in a 3D model. So I had a little bit of a gap right here, but I just filled it with thickened epoxy. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, a little bit of a gap there. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to put a piece of fiberglass around this corner, I think, to reinforce it. I also glued in this piece, which is the forward part of the garage. So the sliding hatch is in here, and this forward part of the sliding hatch coaming is the garage. The hatch slopes forward towards the bow, so rain that hits the hatch goes this way, drops into the garage, and there's a cover over here, and then it makes it out through these limber holes here. The last thing I was starting to look at today was putting on the coaming cleat on the shear strakes, and the section is shown in the plans. I went ahead and put a bevel, which is the same bevel as the cabin top right there, the full length. And then I took a chamfer off the inside corner here. And this is clamped onto the outside of the boat. It's going to be glued, this face here is going to be glued on the inboard side. But right now I'm trying to cut the bevel up here. And in the plans it mentions to kerf the panel, because this little bend, it kind of increases towards the deck. So I've actually ripped it with 2 kerfs back about 28 inches or so, and that allows this to bend really easily. And so I've bent it up into place, and then I've just eyeballed that angle. So I'm gonna cut those across, and then I will move it over to the inboard side, and it'll get glued into here. I cut the in-whale flush with the companionway bulkhead, and I flushed off this part of the cabin top. And you want to be careful that this remains fair, but it's glass on both sides, so I don't think it's going to move at all. But I'll be sure to put a batten on the outside of the boat here to make sure that I don't put any kind of a hard spot in when I put this. I don't think it will. And then that'll get glued on there. So those, one on port, one on starboard, just something I can do. Actually, it's the only thing I can do with regards to the coaming until the seat tops are installed. So hopefully we'll get those lockers painted and get the seat tops glued down. And after these cleats dry, I can dry fit the cockpit sole, which I wish I had done that earlier in the build, because it's been really challenging getting in and out of the boat and not being able to step right there. So that's about it for the weekend, and we'll try to pick at it over the week as well.